All right, welcome to your first math lesson. So, I'm playing around with the lighting a little bit and make sure you can see the board really well. Something you might want to take into consideration is, if I put it on the board, you still have to put it in your notebook. So, now might be a good time to pause the video or take a screenshot so that you can write whatever I put on the board as notes in your notebook. Also, something else to keep in mind, I know that some of you don't have a lot of pages left in your notebook. Just remember, if you run out of pages in your math notebook, I can easily drop another one off to you. It's not a big deal. So just keep in touch and let me know if there's anything that you need. All right, so let's get started. Ratios. Ratios are very similar to fractions. So a ratio is a comparison. It compares different parts of a group, just like with fractions where we were looking at parts of a group or part of a whole. Ratios, again, are looking at different parts of a group, or different objects which are connected in some way. It's usually just a way to compare things. There are three different kinds of ratios, or three different ways that you can write them down, and in your work, you will have to write them all three ways. So oftentimes those worksheets that you're supposed to do today, all 5 of them, they will ask you to write a ratio 3 different ways. If they're asking you to write that ratio 3 different ways, they're referring to this here. So ratios can be written in words, 6 X's to 7 O's. Here are the X's and O's. So here's a group, and we're comparing part of the group to the other part of the group. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 X's to 7 O's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's how you would write it in words. The ratio of X's to O's is 6 to 7. If you're writing it as a ratio, the math symbol for ratio looks like a colon. It's just 2 dots, one on top of the other. So you've got as a ratio 6 to 7. You're going to use that symbol, that's the ratio symbol. But you can also write ratios as fractions, and a lot of what we do this week is going to be very similar to the fractions that we've done 2 weeks ago. So as a fraction, 6 compared to 7, 6 to 7. So it's exactly the same thing that we did before. With fractions, you've got a numerator and a denominator. Whatever is being compared to something else, that is the one that goes on top. So words, 6 to 7, ratio, 6, colon, 7, and then fraction, 6 over 7. So in your notebook, you're going to need to write all this down. I'm going to move the board now, so I don't need to wait for anybody to be finished writing, because hopefully you can just pause the video. There are some more notes that need doing, so let's talk about lowest terms. Ratios can be written in lowest terms just like fractions. So that's something else we need to keep in mind. So keep in mind, for lowest terms, you're going to look for a way to make both numbers smaller. The way you need to do that is by finding a number that you can divide into both of those numbers evenly, so that you will end up with a smaller ratio. It's working the same way that we did with lowest terms fractions. So as an example, let's say that you've got a ratio of 15 to 5. So you can rewrite that in lowest terms by figuring out what's a number that I can divide into 15 and 5 to make that ratio smaller. So you Again, you've got a multiplication chart in your notebook, as part of your homework package, use your multiplication chart to figure out what number you can divide into 15 and 5. If you look down your 2's, you know 2 doesn't work. Both of them are odd numbers. Look down your 3's. 3 goes into 15, but 3 does not go into 5, so you can't use 3. You look down your 4's, can't use that. Look down your 5's, and that's the number that you're going to use to make this smaller. So, just like we did with fractions, you're going to take your 15 and divide it by 5, and take your 5 and divide it by 5, so that you end up with 3 to 1. Same thing. Now, often in your work, especially the first couple of pages for today, you are going to have to write your answers in lowest terms. So you're not only going to be working with ratios, you're going to make sure that you're going to take those ratios that you're finding and writing them as lowest terms, figuring out what's a number that you can divide into both of them to make them smaller. All right, the last thing that you need to know about ratios is that because it's a comparison, you need to make sure that what you're comparing is similar enough to make the comparison work. In the first couple of pages of the work that you're going to be asked to do today, oftentimes it will ask you to compare, meters and centimeters or nickels and dimes. And you need to make sure that the units are as similar as possible. So let's talk about making some conversions as well. So again, I'm going to write on the board. You're going to need to make sure that you're going to write this stuff down too. So feel free to pause these videos whenever you need to so that you can see what's on the board so that you write it in your notebook. All right, so because they're comparisons, you need to make sure that the units are similar enough to make the comparison work. So what do I mean by unit conversions? Well, first of all, let's take the example I was talking about when you've got nickels and dimes. Let's say you have 6 nickels to 3 dimes. So you've got a ratio already. You've got 6 to 3. But nickels and dimes are not the same, even though they're both money. So what you need to do is convert them into a unit that makes the comparison work. So 6 nickels are worth 5 cents. So if I have 6 of them, I have 30 cents. 3 dimes are worth 10 cents. I have 3 of them. So again, I've got 30 cents. Now you'll see this changes your ratio. I had 6 to 3, but really in terms of the same unit, in terms of how much money do I really have 30 to 30. And if I need to, I can of course do my lowest terms on this. 30 to 30, well, the easiest way to make that lowest terms is just to divide by 30. So I end up with 1 to 1. So that's my ratio of actual money. So as you can see, I can do a ratio of coins, or I can do a ratio of actual value. And when you're working with ratios, you want that comparison to make as much sense as it can. So it makes the most sense to try to change whatever you're doing so that they have the same unit. Nickels and dimes are not the same unit. Pennies, or cents, the value of money, are the same unit. 30 cents, 30 cents. There's another example I'm going to do with this, and it's with